Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Got a meeting at 4, so I'm hoping I'll try to be brief. Let's save some time that way. Number one priority in this pandemic has been and will continue to be protecting Manitobans, especially the most vulnerable, and ensuring our healthcare system has a capacity to care for all Manitobans when they need it. Right now, we're really appreciative, and I want to say a special thank you to my colleagues Scott Moe and Premier Ford also, the premiers of our neighboring provinces, Saskatchewan and Ontario, for their help in assisting us with providing additional ICU capacity. We had doubled the capacity in our province, significant increase, but it's not proving to be enough. And so again, I say thank you to our allies. We would be the first to help them if we could, and we have offered in the past and will continue to when we can. But right now, we're working as the Canadian Federation, as a family should, and we're appreciative of their help, so I say very much appreciate that help. Also to the federal government for offering resources to us, some of which are now here and in place, others which are, we understand, forthcoming. Manitobans are hardworking people, and we are a hardworking government, and we are relentless in our pursuit of protecting and safeguarding Manitobans' lives and livelihoods too. As the spring legislative session does come to a close today, our work to protect Manitobans through COVID-19 and advance Manitobans' futures past this pandemic will continue. This session featured the most robust and I think ambitious legislative agenda, very likely in decades. There was one other session, I'm told, that had as many bills. I think it was 2013, but not of the nature of most of our legislation in this session. So our significant legislative agenda has moved us in the direction of accomplishing, I think, 5 things. 1, moving more money to the front lines of our government operations where it's needed to protect Manitobans and the services they depend on. Record investments, all-time record investments in healthcare, families, and in education. A significant commitment, over $1.1 billion for this year alone, for personal protective equipment, vaccine deployment, education supports, and future needs. Budget 2021 increases healthcare funding by over $156 million. That's the highest level in Manitoba history, and combined, our investments in Manitoba after 5 years in government in health, education, and child and family services are per capita the highest of any Canadian province. Budget 2021 was a significant step in the direction of reinforcing our goal of standing up for our most vulnerable citizens. And we recognize that the pandemic has created incredible challenges for Manitobans, not least of them the mental health of many Manitobans. That's why we took steps this year to create the new Department of Mental Health, Wellness and Recovery, and to address current and future needs of Manitobans in that manner. Budget 2021 makes a record investment of over $3 billion in Manitoba schools, including the $5 million Better Education Starts Today strategy to improve our education system, to move more resources to the front lines from a very top-heavy and expensive administrative structure. Plus, we've added an educational funding guarantee of $1.6 billion in additional investments over the next 4 years. Second major priority, improving customer service for Manitobans within government operations. And here there are a number of what may sound like inside baseball things to non-government people, but I hope all Manitobans understand the importance of making sure that our organizational structure works to deliver on the promise we've made of better services to them and better value for those services. We've reformed the Public Service Act with Bill 3. Bill 10 is our healthcare reorganizational structure, which creates greater synthesis among our RHAs and reduces overlap and duplication in some of the services that are not frontline services, but rather more administrative in nature. Bill 15 improves our process for appealing decisions made by MPI on claims there, and our family law reform will reduce the amount of conflict that has habitually been involved in many of the family law issues and move towards a more cooperative approach that's less stressful for participants. The Wall report showed us how not to manage in government, by putting on display the reality of the frailties of the process when it came to investing well over $10 billion on two major projects, Bi-Pole West Line and the Kiosk Dam. The processes that were followed were not those which would allow for Treasury Board and Cabinet to have a look at the decision-making process as it should be reviewed. There were no off-ramps considered once the decisions were made. In the first part of the millennium, they were followed through on regardless of any reconsideration of other factors such as massive and growing structural deficits, declining credit ratings, these types of things. The cost overruns are being investigated. We'll be striking a panel to do that so that we never make these kinds of mistakes again in our future. Hydro's debt tripled over the time of the NDP government, and the value to Manitobans and the risk to Manitobans didn't rise, only the risks rose. The value of services, certainly in the next few decades, is questionable at best in terms of return on investment. Bill, third priority, securing our future by investing in our institutions and attracting investment to our province. Bill 33 and 34 maintain the lowest post-secondary fees in Western Canada. Bill 37, the Planning Act, will improve our ability to better structure and attract capital investment as it comes to our province. This, we know, will create more jobs and economic opportunities for Manitobans. Building and electrical permitting processes are being streamlined and improved so that these kinds of delays don't cause people to invest somewhere else, but rather to choose right and choose Manitoba. Our red tape reduction efforts continue and have been applauded as the strongest in Canada and the United States, but those efforts must continue. 4, maintaining a lower cost of living for Manitobans. We are conscious always of making sure that life is more affordable, especially for those middle and lower income families who are working hard to survive and make ends meet, not just during the COVID pandemic, but always. Hardworking Manitobans deserve a little bit of a break. And now especially that's important. As we come out of COVID, and we will, together, we'll need more help from consumers in our province, and working families are those consumers. So removing the PST on personal services as of December is an important benefit to all Manitobans. It's a fundamental expense that can now be a little less costly. Reducing vehicle registration fees, again, by a further 10% starting in July. We also, working with MPI, saw 2 significant MPI rebates go out to Manitobans. We've indexed the basic personal exemption to take a significant number of Manitobans, about 1,500 additional Manitobans right off the tax rolls that are in that low income bracket. And we're going to make sure that more value is derived from those dollars that we leave with Manitoba families because we trust them to make those decisions with the money they work so hard to earn. 5, we're delivering on the biggest single tax reform one could argue in Manitoba history, I would say most certainly in the last couple of decades in Manitoba history, by phasing out the education property tax by 50% over the next 2 years, beginning this year with 25% rebate. This is nearly $250 million that will flow back into the pockets of property owners across our province, farmers, seniors, struggling to make ends meet, many of them living on fixed incomes, working families, needing a little bit more cash in hand. We ran on this, we committed to doing it, and we're keeping our word as we do. By keeping our promise to begin phasing out the education property tax this year, we're fulfilling our 2020 tax rollback guarantee 1 full year ahead of schedule, and next year we'll go beyond the 2020 that we're leaving on the kitchen tables of Manitoba families because we believe Manitobans deserve this break, and now is the time for them to get it. Additionally, Manitoba continues to provide one of the most generous, broad-based and accessible support programs for small businesses in Canada. Since March 2020, we've made more than 2/3 of $1 billion available to Manitoba businesses, charities, and nonprofit organizations through a multitude of support programs that are simple to apply for and qualify for with less red tape, and that will help to bridge through so that more of our small businesses and family-owned enterprises can continue to offer the services they do so well in the future. Overall, over 70,000 direct payments are expected to be made in total to a range of beneficiaries from our key business support programs. And in addition, the pandemic sick leave program, a projected multi-million-dollar program, provides employers with up to $600 per employee for up to 5 full days of COVID-related sick leave. Pandemic sick leave programs designed to ensure that hardworking employees don't lose their wages and that employers are reimbursed in a timely manner. This is a win-win for small businesses and their workers as well. It ensures that all of us are able to afford to do the right thing and stay home when we're ill or get tested, and will fit in with the federal program, which, though confusing in its early days to qualify for, does offer some support in subsequent weeks if a longer term leave is required. Additionally, we passed legislation to enable a mandatory requirement as well for employees to be given 3 hours of leave so they could get their COVID vaccinations, and I encourage all Manitobans who have yet to get their first vaccination to please do so. Our younger daughter had the chance to go and get hers yesterday and was just pulling up to the super site when everybody started to leave. So she had her hopes dashed, but I know she'll be making another appointment and getting her first vaccination very soon. I encourage all Manitobans to do the same, and if you've had one, your time's coming up for your second shot, and that'll uplift your chances of not getting COVID, and we don't want you to get COVID. So please do get those vaccinations and follow public health orders all the time because they're really important. We've got a number of people that did have been diagnosed with COVID who did have their first shot. And most of the time, they hadn't gone the 2 weeks past their first shot, and they hadn't really had the chance for the vaccine to work yet. Sometimes even after that 2 weeks had passed, some Manitobans did get COVID, even though they had been vaccinated. So know that it's not perfect, but we're thankful that we have a vaccine that works, we think, well over 90% on second vax, effective, and that's really a good opportunity for all of us to make sure that we don't get COVID. Stay out of that healthcare system and make sure that we can help get some of those folks that are waiting for surgery, treatment, and so on back in there and getting looked after as soon as we possibly can. Stay home when you're sick. Stay home when any member of your family is ill. That's crucial to stopping the deadly spread of this virus, and its variants are mean and they're fast. So do your best. We're at a critical point in this third wave. We need you to do 2 things. Get vaccinated as soon as possible. Follow those public health orders. Stay home, stay positive, be kind. Happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters on the line, you will have one preliminary and one follow-up question. Up first this afternoon from the Brandon Sun, Colin.
Good afternoon. In the wake of the mass grave found in Kamloops, BC, there have been calls for more thorough investigations at the sites of residential schools across the country. I realize that these schools were under federal jurisdiction, but what do you think Manitoba's role should be in this process for the schools that were within its provincial boundaries?
Well, I think that we're going to continue to act in support of the federal government and working with our partners, Indigenous leadership, Indigenous volunteer organizations that have been working on this very important aspect of the TRC recommendations. This is a big part of the call to action, and clauses 71, section 71 to 76 relate just to the issues around unmarked graves, burial sites at residential schools, and so on. So Manitoba has been involved, and we plan to continue to be involved in encouraging this important part of our history to be acknowledged and for this necessary healing to begin and to continue.
On a different note, Brandon East MLA Len Eastlifson introduced a bill in the legislature that would require party leaders like yourself to disclose 20 years of their previous income and tax history. I was wondering if you were in support of this bill, given that you previously talked against the idea of having to release income taxes as a desperation by your opponents.
Well, it was when the NDP called on me to release my tax returns, they were during an election campaign. And so they were accusing me of having a tax haven, as I recall, And so I had to answer that phony charge by releasing details of my personal records. This bill comes not at an election. This comes in the middle of a mandate that we were given by the people of Manitoba to strengthen government and transparency. And so, you know, I think Len Eastelson has an interesting idea. I'm sure there'll be discussion and debate on that bill in the fall.
From CJOB, Schuyler.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for your time this afternoon. I just want to get your thoughts on Bill 64. And I understand that it's not to the second reading yet, and obviously a lot of bills have passed. And yes, it is quite large, but you know, it's one that impacts a lot of Manitobans. Are there any big sticking points when we have spoken about this bill so far, or anything that really stands out to you?
Well, for sure, I'm really supportive of the outreach. This is Manitoba's future we're talking about with our education system. It's our children we're talking about, and it's our families we're talking about. So we need to make sure there's community involvement, as there has been at every step of the way with this discussion, because we have to own our education system together. I don't buy the argument some are making that parents don't have enough time to engage in a supportive way in their children's education, and I want to refute that argument by saying, you know, I was fortunate to be raised by a teacher and a farmer who made the time, and they didn't have a lot of extra time. This is before a lot of convenient things were made available. Let's put it that way. I'm that old. Every study shows that the more involvement that parents can have in their children's education, the better for their children. And I think the better for the parents as well. So we need to get creative. Many other countries have, many other jurisdictions have, about facilitating the involvement of parents. The parents and the families who will benefit most from this are lower income families. Their children will benefit more than anyone else by parents having the chance to be involved. And with the internet and the capabilities we've learned to use much more readily as a consequence of COVID, I think there's real opportunities to encourage and enable families to be involved. And teachers are already using technology more than they ever have, most at least, as a consequence of COVID, in terms of things like remote learning. And I say a special thank you to our educators for doing that and being so creative and engaged in the learning process for their students. But parents also need to be encouraged to be involved, and the better involvement parents have, the better the system's going to work. As far as getting the system to work better for the front line, our administrative costs are out of line with every other jurisdiction. They're far too high, and moving those savings to the front line, investing in the classroom, where the student is, where the teacher is a better way to go. So I'm excited about the bill, and I'm excited about the community dialogue that's going to occur as a result of this bill being tabled.
Thank you for that. And I guess just taking a step back and looking at the big picture, you say the province has achieved the $2020 tax rollback, but you know, obviously this wasn't a plan when you ran in the election, but obviously the government spending has been so high since the pandemic came. When you look at the next, you know, maybe 5, 10, 20 years, how are we going to make some of that money back when you know, such big focus is put on making it more affordable for Manitoba?
Well, it's productivity that's the key, and the key to that is an education system that supports the development of skilled people that like to stay here in Manitoba. Lower taxes and less red tape helps us to attract more capital. Before the pandemic, we were one of the leaders in the country in attracting private sector capital investment from within our province, but also from outside, internationally as well. And so we have the opportunity to continue to do that post-pandemic. And we've set the stage for that recovery, I think, to some degree, by making sure that our citizens have more money on the kitchen table after they pay their taxes than many other citizens around the country do. And that's important because that's the chance to find your way to invest in a future, maybe save for a child's education, maybe pay down your mortgage a little faster. Although with the interest rates fairly low right now, I'm not sure too many people remember how important that might be to them. Nonetheless, it is an opportunity for folks to put some money back into the things they value and treasure, and also to support a small business at the same time. So many of our businesses have done well through the pandemic, but many others have suffered mightily. And I know we're all really excited to get through this third wave, get everybody that we can vaccinated, and get back to some of the freedoms that we'll never take for granted again.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good afternoon, Premier. Josh Aldridge, Winnipeg Sun. Hi, Josh. Was this your last time in question period or in the chamber? And whether or not you've made that decision, how would you characterize today as a point to reflect and look back on when you look back this time in the future?
Well, there's many aspects of reflection. Of course, we're facing up to so many challenges on an almost daily basis, Josh. I think that it's difficult to pinpoint a time in my life that there have been more major decisions to deliberate on and to make that have come at our team faster than during this pandemic. And I'm very, very proud of the people I have the honor to serve with. I'm very proud of our staff. I'm tremendously proud of Manitobans for the way they've responded. I mean, we did better than everybody a lot of this pandemic and worse than everybody for part of it as well. I mean, we've been peak and valley, right? And it isn't for lack of preparation that this has happened. I think when the analysis comes through in days ahead, we'll identify different realities that are true here in Manitoba that aren't so true in other parts of the country that have caused some of the negative impacts of COVID being able to spread more rapidly in certain demographics, and being able to hold it off for a time has been great. But now I guess I'm just especially appreciative of all the dedicated people out there in our province that have followed the health orders, that are going out and getting vaccinated, that are just doing the right things to get us through this thing. And as I say, I don't think we'll ever look back without appreciating all the freedoms that we've recovered and rediscovered as we move forward.
All right. Last day of the session for the spring session, why did we not got a BITSA bill to this point, and when should we expect to get the BITSA bill?
You know, I'll let the finance minister speak to the specific timing, Josh. As you know, the opposition's allowed to delay certain bills, and so they have chosen to do that till fall. But I'll let Scott Fielding speak to the specific timing. I can tell you that the bills that the NDP has decided to delay are really important bills. I mean, one of them will reform and improve our education system, move at least $40 million to the front line where our kids are. Another one will give more choice for those who want to purchase liquor, give them more choice, probably better selection options. That's great. You know, and there are many others that I think are great bills that they've chosen to delay. They have the right to do that. That's the deal, and I'm not disputing that. But I do think Manitobans will benefit when we get back in there and we can strengthen our Public Utilities Board so that we don't get another kiosk bipole boondoggle. And we can make sure that we have more transparent processes for community development, economic development. These are really good initiatives that we'll have to wait now till October to get through. But nonetheless, it's been a really ambitious and robust session, a record one. And as I say, I'm tremendously proud of the drafters, our staff here, our government employees have been involved, not just on the front line of COVID, but throughout our government service. They've been, a lot of them, working from home, very stressful, trying to train their kids at the same time. A lot of our parents have faced the challenge of children being home because half our schools have been closed. It's been a monumental time, and a time that Manitobans, I think, have really shown their stuff. And for the most part, really joined Team Manitoba and really have risen to the challenge. And I'm very, very proud of Manitobans for that.
From CBC Manitoba, Ian.
Good afternoon, Premier. Manitoba, you noted just a little earlier today that Manitoba has been involved in discussions about the TRC call for action, and you note that the province will continue to be involved. But there's been a clear outcry in the last few days that the status quo, that just discussing matters isn't enough, and that people and Manitobans want real responses and quickly. Will the province, as an example, commit funding to search for graves at residential school sites?
We'll partner with the federal government. The TRC recommendations are absolutely clear as to who has to take the lead here, Ian, and that's not passing the buck. That's actually something that we've raised with the federal government. on TRC call to action items. So we're going to continue to. Manitoba has the highest Indigenous population of any province in Canada. We have a sad history, as does much of the country, of residential school inequities and injustices being created. And so we need to be willing to confront that. We've been working with the federal government in partnership, and we'll continue to, and with community groups, and we'll continue to do that as well. So we're ambitious about this issue, and we aren't just starting. We have been working on some projects, and we'll continue to, on not just this piece of the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations, but on many aspects of the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations. They're very important for us as a government, very important for us as Canadians, I think, to pursue.
Do you believe it's appropriate to have fans in the stands at Jets games when we are dealing with a hospital crisis that keeps getting worse and we're sending people out of province?
Yeah, I think there will be some fans, a small number, a few, in the next Jets game. And I know they'll be safe, and I know they'll be careful, and I know they'll follow public health rules. And I think we should take that as a sign of some small amount of optimism that we can start to get our lives back here in Manitoba.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Good afternoon, Premier. Back to the delay on the budget implementation bill. It's normally tabled in the spring. There has been some precedent to have it delayed till the fall. Is the reason you're delaying it have anything to do with Manitoba hydro rates, and have you decided yet on a rate increase level for this coming winter?
Yeah, the hydro rate increase, an interim one, it's been misrepresented by the opposition. We should be clear on that. It's an interim measure until we can get to a PUB fairly quickly to set a multi-year rate. Up until recently, PUB set a rate every couple of years, as you know. This interim rate will be lower than the average of the last number of years, but it needs to be established so that we can get to a rate establishment process more transparent, where PUB is stronger and where they're able to make multi-year rate decisions. The old system cost tens of millions of dollars to ratepayers. It was very expensive, and every other province that has a public utility that does hydro doesn't do it this way for a reason. So there's a benefit to ratepayers to know what the rates are going to be for a 4-year period, not just every other year. And there's a benefit to small businesses to know. And I think there's a benefit to investment as well. You know, having lower hydro rates is a real benefit for attracting investment. We've attracted Simplot to expand recently, and Roquette, and which is a pea processor, sort of that beyond meat concept apparently. So we did that because we have clean green hydro, and now we have the ability to attract even more opportunity, I think, if we don't have rates flipping around every couple of years. I think everybody will benefit by that, and I'm excited to see that happen. So there'll be more clarity on that in the bits of bill that you've referred to. But again, I'll let the finance minister make those pronouncements.
Well, and you said it would be less than the average, and if we go back, the annual rate increases approved by the PUB has been generally in the 3.5–4% range. So are you saying that it'll be lower than that in the fall, winter of this year?
Well, we'll just keep it a secret just between you and I, but yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I'll let the finance minister say more on it when he comes out with the announcement. Because I don't want to contradict myself, Steve.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Hi, Mr. Premier. There's a report at Winnipeg City Hall on supervised consumption sites. It suggests, the city could bypass the province if it got permission from the federal government if it wanted to move in this direction. However, the barrier would be the services, which are mainly health care services. Are you still, cold or lukewarm to the idea of a supervised consumption site?
I'm warm to the idea of us setting up a new department on addictions and wellness, investing hundreds of millions of dollars on this area, focusing very much on literally dozens of initiatives, and we are actually really up to the task of tackling this. There's been such a focus, it seems, in some quarters on making the drugs available in an environment with a safe injection site that we're forgetting about all the other possible things we could be doing. We're not forgetting about those things. we'll continue to invest in those initiatives. And we're going to be strengthening our focus on wellness and mental health as we move forward, because COVID has, I think, clearly demonstrated that that's an area that we need to focus on even more.
My follow-up too, and I may have missed this, but when the announcement was made that we were transferring patients out of province because of our ICU capacity issues, North Dakota was mentioned. Is there any are discussions still ongoing with North Dakota, or is that a no-go that we won't be sending patients out?
Yeah, that I'd heard that mentioned as well, but I haven't had any briefing or update to tell me that anything is happening in that direction, Jeff. I'm sure the health team will be able to answer that in more detail. I don't have anything to add to that. I'm going to just say North Dakota has been nothing short of wonderful in terms of our relationship with them through this pandemic, and I don't have the exact number of truckers, but it's getting up there that have been vaccinated, and I want to say thanks to, again, to Governor Doug Burgum and his team for helping that. We got a really nice letter. Thank you very much to Terry over at the Trucking Association for his complimentary note to us. That means a lot. Thank you.
From City News, Mike.
Good afternoon, Premier Pallister. My first question, MNU President Darlene Jackson says redeployed nurses feel like they're being dropped into a foreign country, and rotating nurses into a newer expanded role is a Band-Aid or for a gaping wound. She wants to know, will you acknowledge that there is a critical nursing shortage in Manitoba?
I'm not going to negotiate with the MNU in the media. There's a negotiation underway. Excuse me. There's a labor negotiation underway. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to respond or return fire to Darlene. If she wants to talk in the media, there's nobody going to stop her.
For my follow-up, it's been just over 4 years since the nurses, they've been working with that expired CBA. Can you comment on this, why this government believes its proposed contract to the nurses union is competitive, and if it addresses recruitment or retention of nurses within the province?
2 points. One, we spent a significant amount of time and effort, and we had good cooperation and support from a number of the labor organizations and their representatives to reduce the number of bargaining units remarkably. This is going to streamline our negotiation ability, focus, allow frontline healthcare workers to focus on the people they care about that need treatment and care, as opposed to sitting at a bargaining table. We undertook that initiative to clean up the mess we inherited, and that did take some time. The MNU did add some, as a result of some revoting and reconsolidating of a number of the labor pools within the healthcare sector. The MNU did add some members, but they weren't as profoundly impacted as some other groups. I know that. That being said, let's move together now and let's get focused on the things we need to do to reach agreement. I understand. Under the previous administration, you didn't see as many labor disputes because there wasn't somebody sticking up for the taxpayers and the ratepayers of the province very often. There is now. So not going to negotiate in the media. We've got a proposal. We think it's fair. The MNU can respond, but I'm not going to respond through the media.
Our final reporter this afternoon, Mr. Premier, from the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Good afternoon, Premier. We were promised we'd see vaccination incentives last week and then this week. What's the holdup with COVID-19 vaccination incentives?
Well, I don't know, Carol. There's nobody else in the country doing it. I understand the Free Press wants us to release our vaccine incentive plan now, but we'll release it in due course.
Premier, was today your last question period, or will you be back when the House resumes in the fall?
Oh, Carol, I couldn't live without questions from you and the Free Press and the other media members. I don't know if I could handle it. So I'll definitely be back in the fall. Thank you.